Good morning and afternoon, everybody. My name is Jamie Pasquinelli, and I'm the District Manager of ULI Pittsburgh. On behalf of my colleagues at ULI Indiana, Michigan, Pittsburgh, and Kansas City, I want to welcome all of you today. We're thrilled to have you here for the final segment of our Regional Emerging Trends series. We hope you were able to join the past 2 weeks. Today's program will be a great continuation of that conversation. The first week of the program, we shared ULI's Emerging Trends report, followed by the response panels of regional and local experts to give you insights into what 2021 may look like in your city or area. Last week, we took a deeper dive into the report and discussed capital markets and what recovery may look like in light of the pandemic. Today's conversation will explore how advancements in technology are enhancing and disrupting real estate processes and practices. I want to start off with a shout out to the staff and our district councils, Indiana, Michigan, Pittsburgh, and Kansas City, for all the work they put into making this unprecedented collaborative program a success. I'd also like to thank all of our sponsors for this event. Our work and the programs we do in our communities would not be possible without their support. So a huge thank you to Millhouse, Cohen & Company, Cityscape Residential, Valbridge Property Advisors, SME, CEC, and Associated Bank. Finally, I'd like to thank all of you, our members. You are what makes ULI the meaningful, valuable organization it is, and we are so grateful for your continued engagement and support. Now I'm going to turn it over to Derek Craner of Cityscape Residential to kick off today's program. Derek?
Thank you, and hello everyone. I'm Derek Craner, a partner at Cityscape Residential. We are a full-service real estate development and construction firm that focuses on multifamily residential communities. We are proud to be a supporting sponsor for this great series, and it's my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Constance Freedman. Constance is the founder and managing partner of Moderne Ventures and the Modern Passport, an early-stage investment fund and technology immersion program focused on investing in technology companies in and around the industries of real estate, mortgage, finance, insurance, and home services. Constance had a family commitment come up, but she has graciously provided us a video of her presentation and will be joining us live afterwards for Q&A. Now I turn it over to Constance. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Constance Freedman. Thanks so much for having me here today. We're going to talk about some emerging trends, tech trends, in fact, in real estate today. So first, I'll tell you just a little bit about me. I'm from Moderne Ventures. I'm the founding manager and partner. We invest in technology companies all around real estate, finance, insurance, home services, and hospitality. I've been doing this for about 12 years. And work with a lot of folks who are here in the audience today. What I thought I would do in the time we have here today is first share a little bit more about us, just for some context. We'll go into tech and trends on real estate, what we're seeing right now. And then I always like to leave people with some practical applications, so things you can actually act on if you want to right now. So just a little bit about us. Like I said, we've been doing this since 2008, about 12 years, 13 years, going on 13 years. We've been investing across 3 funds. We launched our 3rd fund recently. We look at about 4,500 companies almost every year. So as you know, there's a lot of crap out there. They all find us. I'm sure they find you too. But we say no to almost all of them. We end up working with about 10 or 20 companies every year that we think can really make a big difference in the industry. And over the last 12 years and across the last 3 funds, we've made about 100 investments. We are structured in 3 sort of entities. So first, we're a fund. So we invest in tech companies, primarily 2 to 20 million in revenue. So by virtue of that, they're early stage, but they're real companies. We have a network that we've built up over the last 12 years of about 700 executives and corporates across our industries. People maybe like yourselves who are looking for tech and innovation to create a competitive advantage and some differentiation. And often they look for us to help them do so. And then the third leg of our platform is the Modern Passport program. So this is a 7-month program, an industry immersion program that we run 2 to 3 times a year with 6 to 10 companies each. And it's really to help bring new technologies into our industries and connect them with our network. And at the end of this, I'll talk a little bit more about how you can get involved in any of these things if you are interested. We work all across the asset classes, across residential, hospitality, retail, office, multifamily, the adjacent industries like finance, insurance, and home services, really with some of the largest companies in the world. And so, you know, we've been at this for a long time. We understand the gaps, the opportunities, and the challenges in our industries. And really what we do is try to think about how can we look at some of those emerging things that are happening really at large, not just in real estate, but globally across all industries, and how do we bring that into real estate? So let me tell you about a few things that we see happening today. You know, the technology investment has increased by about 600% over the last 4 years, just in real estate alone. Now, I will tell you though, that while we've gone from 2 billion to about 32 billion in commercial real estate investing alone, it still makes up a very, very, very tiny fraction of all venture dollars. So we look at, we look at the venture industry as a whole, and about 4% of all venture dollars are going into real estate, despite the fact that, you know, it's one of the largest industries as percentage of the US GDP. But yet, you know, that it is 32 billion, still a lot of money. So there's a significant increase. So why are people so excited about this? Well, just as we see paper-based processes letting themselves to digital, you know, a la DocuSign, where we were early investors, broadcast TV going to Netflix, hotels going to Airbnb. You know, we think that real estate, you know, people look at real estate and say, you know what, there's some pretty antiquated processes here, and they're ripe for change. And we see players coming into the market say, you know what, we're either going to start disrupting this market, or those inside need to start innovating. Now, COVID or no COVID, why do you invest in technology? And I don't mean invest dollars, but invest time, invest your resources and your dollars. It's really, the only reason you should be doing it is to generate returns. So whether that's a higher revenue, decrease OpEx, or adding value somehow throughout your organization or to your clients or customers or residents or tenants, the only reason to really invest is to ultimately increase your bottom line. The way that we look at the world is, what are those most common business challenges that we see out there, and how can different technology address it? So when we think about business challenges, these aren't business challenges that are unique to real estate, but they're all very relevant. So how do you get new business? Through referrals or lead gen. And we all have a communication and a marketing platform. We think about financing and insurance for every transaction we do, and of course, operational transaction efficiency and developing new relationships. So again, none of these are unique to real estate, but over the years, we've brought in new companies that can all be applicable in our industries, and through the platform, bring them into the market. So again, thinking about these business challenges, applying them across the different asset classes and the life cycle of a transaction. That's what we think is really important in terms of generating that bottom line value. And when we pull the technology companies across a portfolio, you can find that by layering these different technologies and measuring those technologies, you might find that you can increase your NOI by, in this example, as much as 8%. And so one of the things that I just want you to make sure that I leave you with here today is that now is the time to lean in with technology. It's really easy when things are going great, when, you know, the world is, when everything's going up and to the right, to not do anything. But, you know, in times of uncertainty, in times of change, in times when there's a downturn, you know, that is more reason than ever to lean in. And it's also a time when those who do lean in are going to separate themselves much greater than those who don't, because it's very hard to catch up if you've been ignoring tech and innovation for a long time, and it's much easier to pull ahead at a higher velocity if you're first. So with that, I'm going to launch into a couple of examples. I talked about, sort of this top line revenue, decrease OpEx, and adding value scenario. And so what I thought I'd do is just go through a handful of companies. Like I said, we have 100 in our portfolio. We look at a lot more every year, but I just wanted to leave you with some examples of some that we're seeing more recently that we think can add a lot of value overall. I'm going to start with one that truly we believe can change the world. So this is a company called Icon, and it's a 3D printing company. It actually can 3D print homes, and it costs about $4,000 to 3D print an 800 square foot home and takes about 24 hours to build. Now, Icon started out with doing, addressing the affordable homes part of the industry here. And there's about 1 billion people who don't have access to adequate housing. And coupled with a company called News Story and the government, they built a 3D printed community in Mexico, about 30 homes. They've got a second community in Austin, Texas, and they're building more. But that's not all that Icon is relevant to. They're building with mid-tier and luxury home builders. They're also building with the military, and they're also building off-world. So they've started to 3D print simulated habitats on the moon and on Mars with NASA. So truly, when we think about a new technology that can really change the world, we think about Icon, and one we're pretty excited about. Second company that's maybe not quite as drastic, but still creates a lot of value is a company called LeaseLock. So LeaseLock completely removes security deposits, an insurtech company that allows you to take away the security deposits while still providing insurance to the property owners against rent loss and damage and turn costs. So what LeaseLock found is that by advertising the no-fee move-ins, they got as much as almost a 20% lift in lease conversion. So more volume even coming in and higher closing rates. They found that they could get as much as $1 million of annual income on ancillary revenues by upcharging a little bit on the consumer side, and then as much as $1 million of decreased admin costs. Now, one of their clients is a case study you see on the right. One of their clients, they found they were saving as much as $180,000 a year on a per property basis. So when you layer that across 90 properties, in the example of this particular client, it's about $16.5 million a year. So very significant value that the company can provide and drive, and something that they've just been really taken off. They've grown about 300% in the last 6 months alone since COVID. Another company that goes along with bringing services to multifamily and to commercial office. So we think about companies like Hello Alfred, think about companies like Home, which is bringing community into the buildings. So Home has primarily focused on the office space, but also on the apartments in bringing exercise classes, wine tastings, socially distanced, but also physically together when it makes sense, and bringing in this new amenity into the buildings. A third value add is a company called Moto Refi. So what Moto Refi does is it actually helps to refinance auto loans. Now, about 85% of people take out financing when they buy a new car. And about 100% of those people get financing from the dealers. So it turns out dealers don't make money on cars anymore. They actually make money on off of customers on financing. And you never get a good rate when you leave that dealer. I'm just going to tell you that right now. So what Moto Refi does is they have created sort of an arbitrage by partnering with credit unions. They have a completely digital platform in which they can refinance auto loans and save people as much as about $100 a month, so $1,200 annually. And they will provide a $200 referral fee for anyone who brings them a new client. So why is this all relevant to real estate? Well, certainly by providing affiliate marketing, which a lot of you have, whether it's to your residents, to your tenants, to your clients, to your agents, you can generate this $200 of referral fees for every new client you refer, while adding value to the residents. And there's also clearly a bump by providing, by increasing that disposable income for your residents, increasing sort of value both in their pocket, but also as someone who cares. All right, moving from sort of the revenue focus into operations. Some of you have heard of TaskEasy. So TaskEasy does lawn care and snow removal. Kind of boring, not that sexy, but they do this nationwide across a whole portfolio. So if you don't have 100% maintenance staff on your properties, you can have one provider that services your whole portfolio instead of hundreds or thousands of contracts across the portfolio. They're in all 50 states. They've mowed over 2 million lawns and still chopping. Similarly, on the maybe not so sexy side, but super interesting, is Unicast. So Unicast is tracking human mobility. It's using data actually coming from our phones, and can really assess demographic, location. They can test, what kind of markets are likely to become hot markets based on where people are getting dropped off at night, where people are migrating during the day. This is really useful for, say, site selection, store optimization, and just general competitive intelligence. All right, now kind of coming back to the value props. We recently invested in a company called Stride. Stride provides benefits to the 1099 or the gig economy worker. Now, again, when we think about sort of 2008, 2010, that was when we really saw the rise of the gig economy worker. When we look at today, where we see severe unemployment by many people who are living in your buildings, or who will start co-working very soon in your buildings as they start coming back to work, we're going to see a lot of people who aren't covered by healthcare, dental, vision, and other benefits. So in residential real estate alone, we've got about 2 million realtors, residential and commercial real estate, 2 million realtors and brokers who 80% of them are not covered by spousal or employee health insurance. So what Stride does is basically provide a platform. They're partners with about 200 health insurance companies, including healthcare.gov. You have a completely digital experience that you can go on and sign up for the best healthcare, cheapest healthcare for you. If you qualify for subsidies, it automatically gets deducted, and they white label it. So if you want to provide this to your residents as a building value, you can white label it for your building. If you want to provide it to tenants, especially for co-working spaces, this can be a really valuable benefit to those tenants. And if you've got contractors working for you, again, another value add without damaging the 1099 relationship status. Today they work they help to power benefit platforms for companies like Uber and Lyft, DoorDash, Postmates, Keller Williams, and many others. All right, just a couple left. Ritual, some of you may have heard of Ritual back when we were all working in offices. They provide a contact-free and delivery charge-free food delivery service. And so they were in more than 2,000 offices and residential buildings as amenity. They're global. And what they do is they provide sort of a virtual go and get coffee break. So one person does the ordering, there's a drop off in one location in the building, whether it's residential or commercial. And people find this as a very valuable amenity of a building. It's basically bringing a virtual food court into the building. All right, and the last two I'm going to talk about is really kind of focus on this idea of getting people to come back to work. Getting people to feel safe in the buildings again. Now you can think about this in terms of air, you can think about this in terms of light, you can think about this in terms of sanitation applications. A lot of different ways to start making buildings safe again. This particular company does air filter subscriptions. Again, not all technology is sexy here, but on a subscription basis, they will drop off air filters, even the highest quality, so which help to filter out some of the viruses, but everything in between. But the value here is that you always have it on a quarterly basis when you need it. There's no more storage of filters and space necessary. It comes on an as needed basis for you to install and make sure you're maintaining your HVAC and systems. And last but not least, I'll talk about Vive. Vive is using light to help make buildings safe. So they use a technology called VLD lighting, which eradicates 99.9% of bacteria and is safe for humans. So we've seen UV lighting around for a long time, which eradicates things like viruses and bacteria, but it's not safe, for continuous lighting around people. And Vive, on the other hand, the technology, the VLD technology that they use is. And so it's really used across all kinds of industries. Delta Airlines just did a big deal with them, so they're going to be in some of their airplanes. It's in food services, it's in gyms, it's in schools, medical services, and of course, residential and commercial buildings. The cost of Vive is on par with traditional lighting. So there's some, when you're doing a retrofit, there's some extra cost associated with doing a retrofit, but if you're doing a remodeling or you're doing a new build, the cost is the same. So renovation or new build, sort of a no-brainer to put in the Vive lighting as opposed to traditional old school lighting. All right, that was just a few examples I wanted to give. Obviously, technology is changing the world, how we live, work, and play. And it's really changing how we do business. So what I hope I can leave you here with was something new that you didn't know about before, something actionable. It only works, you're only innovative if you actually do something, and hopefully something valuable. The only reason why you should do something is if you can actually create value from it. So what I invite you to do is actually take action. You can sit back and do nothing and let technology happen to you, or you can actually get involved and lead the way and have technology happen for you. And so, the first thing I say is just recognize its value, and the second thing is do something about it. Certainly, if you want to learn more about our program and how we connect people with the industry, with these new technologies coming into the space, we invite you to participate in our mentor program, pilot some of our companies, but overall, I just implore that as you think about where technology leads us in the next 3, 5, 10 years, which is something totally different from where, potentially where real estate has been in the past, I really, implore you to invest in technology for your own companies and engage, because it really will happen to you no matter what. And you might as well help shape the solutions and pave the way. Again, my name is Constance Freedman. I enjoyed being here with you today. If you want to learn more about anything we've talked about or about us, please send me an email at info@moderneventures.com, and I would enjoy hearing from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Constance, for sending us that amazing video. That was so interesting hearing about all of that technology. But we do have Constance here with us live. She is hopping on right now. So please take this time to type your question that you may have for her in the Q&A. Constance, we already have a question. What percentage of your portfolio is specifically geared toward property technology? And do you see a need to invest more because of COVID?
Hey, thanks for having me, and thanks for accommodating my schedule today. So Yeah, so we invest I'd say 100% of our companies are applicable into property technology space. Now, we really do like to invest outside the industry and bring companies in. So you saw, something like Vive or Moto Refi or Stride, as examples where you might not immediately say they're prop tech companies, but they all have applicability within the real estate and prop tech industry. So, I'd say about a third or a half of our companies are very sector specific. So like LeaseLock as an example, or TaskEasy, but they all have applicability, 100% of them. So about 100 companies now are specific. And do we see a need to invest more because of COVID? Well, that is a tricky question. So I think that, as I said at the end, we're definitely seeing more people lean in and take advantage of technology. Like I said, it's easy to see, when things are going well, to just sort of do business as usual. But right now is really a time to lean in, whether it's to find more opportunity for new revenue streams or it's find more opportunity to decrease your expenses. Now, we have, from a venture standpoint, which is sort of different, like how we look at the world, we certainly see great deal flow coming in and investor friendly deal flow coming in. So we've made 4 investments in the last half, which is a more, I guess a quicker pace than what we've done traditionally. And really because we've just seen more opportunity. I don't necessarily see a need to per se, but where we see a lot of opportunity to address big challenges or take advantage of, just sort of good deal economics, we're starting to do so. Pick that up as a response.
Awesome, thank you. We have another question from Diana Reed. She's from Pittsburgh. Hi, Diana. Are you seeing specific technology-enabled solutions for the intersection of housing and healthcare, i.e. senior housing, skilled nursing, medical office applications?
Yeah, we definitely are seeing that intersection. And I think, again, Vive is another good example of that, which is, using lighting technology in the senior housing and in healthcare space to, help even medical office too, to help eradicate some of that bacteria. This has been a space, though, even pre-COVID, that we've been spending a lot of time on, whether it's with experience. So, we think that real estate's no longer really about the transaction. But it's also a lot about what happens before and after. And so once I've come into my senior housing facility as a resident, or once I or traditional housing for that matter, but what kind of experience do I have once I'm there? What kind of service amenities and the like do I see once I'm there? So Hello Alfred is a good example of that, which is bringing hospitality into multifamily, including into senior healthcare, where they tidy up once a week. They see that you're out of toilet paper and they just automatically replenish it. They get the dry cleaning and hang it up. They do all of life's little chores, and so they're doing a lot for the building in terms of being like a building operating system for the property owners and managers. And so those are a couple examples, but overall we're definitely seeing a sort of cross section of converting where you work, live, and play, and that's across asset classes.
Awesome, thank you. We have another one from Robin Zafalik. What is your thought on technology companies in the building design drawings, real-time construction drawing updates, building commissioning, and building performance after occupancy based on original building modeling and design?
Let's see. That's a good question. I'll be honest, we haven't done a ton in that space. We've certainly looked at a lot of 3D tech companies doing kind of virtual walkthroughs, virtual tours, and we've got a company called Cubicasa, which will take any floor plan, any file type. So it could be a drawing, it could be a CAD drawing, it could be a PDF file, and they will digitize it and store it so that it can be searchable and indexable and marketable. that's probably one of the most interesting ones. We used to have a company called Field Lens, which actually got bought by WeWork. And a lot of that was also kind of like real time as the construction went up, how do blueprints change and how do drawings change and things like that. And it would catalog all that in real time. So I think that, you know, these technology companies definitely exist. I will say that one of the challenges that we've seen with any of those in particular has been who pays for them. So, you know, like I think we've had a challenge on people deciding that it was their job to pay for it. So honestly, I think they expect like larger companies like Procore or something like that to take on some of this functionality features, and you know, it just hasn't happened so much yet. And so, you know, but like the subs, you know, they can use it but they don't want to pay for it. The owners and developers, they can use it but they don't want to pay for it. So it's been a kind of a weird dynamic, honestly. So we haven't, you know, I don't have like a real affirmative answer on that one.
Yeah, thanks. So we have one more question from Dave Lesner. What are you looking for the mentor program you mentioned to highlight the companies you represent?
Well, maybe I'll explain the program a little bit. So, as I mentioned, we've got about 700 executives and corporates that are part of the program. And you know, really what it is are executives across the industries who see that tech and innovation can be compelling and help them. And the commitment to us is that people dedicate a half day of their time. And what we do for that half day that they sign up with us is we will match them with different companies that are part of our Passport program. So we do these one-on-one sort of curated 30-minute speed dating sessions. We actually hold them every other Thursday now, post-COVID. We used to do it physically at like events like ULI or NAA or NMHC or, you know, any of these big industry events, or even for a lot of our corporate partners. But now that we're all virtual, we host them every other Thursday online. And so it really ends up being like a really kind of cool experience. Like you as an industry executive get to sort of step out of the day job for a half day and, you know, just hear about some of these new technologies coming into the space. And all we ask is that, you know, you sort of listen to their pitches and give feedback. And really that's the extent of the commitment. Oftentimes one or two will resonate and, you know, the conversation will continue. And so it's, you know, it's good for both of you. And you know, really ultimately our mentors get the opportunity to help shape the solutions that are coming into the space, you know, so get a first look and then ultimately help shape their solutions and give them good feedback about how they can best approach it. So it ends up being a really great program for both sides, and that's what we look for from our mentors.
Awesome. That sounds like a great program.
Yeah.
So we have one more question, enough time for one more question. And we have this one from Lydia Warren. Are any of your ventures or others on your radar focused helping municipal governments invest in tech, eGov, to help on their side of the development equation?
We have that are focused on that space. And one of the things that we do, we sort of nature where we sit in the world, we provide sort of assessments on something like this, or you know, for partners, which you know in some cases are municipal governments, but we're representative of. And so a lot of what we thought are like, well, what are the challenges you're trying to about 4,500 companies every year. You know, some of them make it to our portfolio, some of them don't. But in any case, we often have, you know, feedback or, you know, can provide some recommendations based on what we've seen. So, you know, some companies specifically, I mean, Icon certainly, you know, is helping on the sort of municipality and government. Task Easy that I mentioned, one of the is they
Constance, you're breaking up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is take that question and hook you up with Lydia. So maybe you could, you know, email her with an answer, because I think that's a really interesting question. We just couldn't hear you. Oh, no problem whatsoever. We just really appreciate your time and being here. That was such an interesting presentation, and you have such amazing input. So thank you so much. Okay. So next, I would love to introduce Larry Mitchell of Valbridge Property Advisors. Thank you, Larry.
I need my teenage daughters to come in here and teach me how to do this kind of stuff. Yeah, thank you very much. Valbridge Property Advisors, very happy to be a sponsor of the Urban Land Institute presentation. We're happy that we have many members that belong. We are the largest independent valuation company in the United States. We have 78 offices, over 675 professionals, and well over 200 plus MAI designated appraisers. We are a big valuation company, but we also partner with a lot of tech companies looking into the future. We just launched not too long ago an automated valuation module for the commercial real estate industry. We're working right now with another partner that can do lease abstract automated extraction of market data out of lease documents. And we are the owner of an appraisal report writing database and software program called Data Appraise. But overall, we're happy to be here. Urban Land Institute does great things. It's very thoughtful and very, very beneficial to people in my industry, because sometimes when you get into the weeds is when you need people that have delved into it and really know a lot about it. It's my pleasure now to hand off the program to the moderator of today's panel, and that's Jill Ferrari.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jill Ferrari, and I am the managing partner of Renovare Development. We are a full-service real estate development company based in Detroit, Michigan, where I am also the co-chair of the ULI Michigan District Council. I'm going to briefly introduce the names of the regional response panel, and then each panelist will give a few minutes background on themselves and their work. Joining our panel today, and I ask you all to please turn on your cameras as we begin the panel. Angie Wethington from Skinnell Properties, Michael Fournier from Bosch, and also the mayor of the great city of Royal Oak, Michigan. Eve Picker from Small Change and developer extraordinaire, and Paul Worcester from Simplify. So with that, I would like to start with Angie, just a few minutes about you and your work, please.
Hi, I'm Angie Wethington. I'm a director with Skinnell Properties. Skinnell Properties is a 30-year-old company. We are a developer and investor. Our largest part of our business is industrial property. About 10% of our business is also student housing, multifamily, some mixed use. We develop industrial properties, both speculative and build-to-suit, across the country, and about 18 months ago expanded into Europe. A big portion of our business is build-to-suits for some of these companies that are thriving right now during COVID, those e-commerce companies like Amazon, FedEx, Home Depot, Lowe's, those types of organizations. But again, we also do speculative work. I personally am on the capital team. I jokingly say I chase the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I touch projects from the moment they're an idea with our developers, work on underwriting, chase financing, debt, and then ultimately after the project delivers, we'll turn around and sell them.
Wonderful, thank you. Next we have Michael Fournier.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mike Fournier here, calling in from Royal Oak, Michigan. In my addition to my responsibilities as mayor of the great city of Royal Oak, I'm full-time employed in the auto industry with Bosch. For those of you who don't know much about Bosch, you may have heard about our dishwashers and our power tools, but we're about an $80 billion to $100 billion company that spreads a span of different services and products. Certainly automotive is a bigger part of our business, but we're involved in a number of other industries across the globe. Our tagline is invented for life, so anything we do really has the purpose of improving the human condition across the globe. My responsibility at Bosch, I'm head of connected mobility sales here in North America, which means we have really three products that we're focused on here. One being automated valet parking, which you may have seen in the press recently about how we can take cars today out of the dealership and navigate them in and out of parking garages without a driver. We have our EV charging solutions, which certainly have an impact on infrastructure as far as making that experience with your EV more convenient and charging places accessible and managing the health of your battery as you start to move more into that realm of mobility. And then we do a lot of what we'll call over-the-air updates, connecting vehicles to make sure that they have the latest and greatest software and features that everyone from fleet managers to average ordinary consumer can use and make sure their vehicle is connected. Been a veteran of the auto industry for some time now. Started my career at General Motors. Took a little bit of stint out to do some financial work in the cosmetic industry, and found my way back into Bosch. And I've been serving as mayor for about 4 years. Going on my 5th, and I've been on our we'll call city commission for almost a decade now. So it's great to be here with all of you and look forward to the panel discussion to come.
Wonderful, thank you. Eve?
Yes, thank you very much for having me here today. So my name is Eve Picker, and I'm the founder of a real estate equity crowdfunding platform called Small Change. So that is quite a mouthful. But simply put, we match investors with developers to raise funds for transformative real estate projects to make better cities everywhere. Developers post their real estate offerings on our platform, and investors invest in them through a pretty seamless, fully electronic fintech experience. So why is this possible? Because of the Jobs Act of 2012 and because of financial technology. With our platform, we're accomplishing several things that were simply not possible 10 years ago. First, the Jobs Act introduced changes to securities regulations that permit advertising of investment opportunities. No longer are investments made behind closed doors. They are made out in the open and everyone can participate. Now, everyone over the age of 18 can invest. That's 100% of the adult population instead of the 3% that are known as accredited investors. And second, technology makes it possible to provide an online investment flow that seemed impossible not long ago. Gone are the 2-inch stack of papers to plow through when you invest. Instead, it takes less than 60 seconds to become an investor on our platform. So why is this important? We need creative and new solutions to solve the critical issues in our built environment. Buildings that keep you cool or warm, less expenditure of energy, new affordable building techniques, and much more. But by their very nature, traditional financial institutions are averse to investing in innovation, but the crowd just might. We believe that crowdfunding might very well become the next community banking as neighbors invest in their own community or in affordable housing or in an innovative way to house the homeless or in any number of things that create better places for everyone. Thank you.
Wonderful. And last but not least, from Kansas City, Paul?
Hi, good to be with you. Paul here. I started out in the multifamily industry about 14 years ago. My dad gave us his life savings of $200,000, and we began buying small multifamily properties in the Kansas City area. We ended up acquiring about 4,000 apartment units over the next 14 years, and we built a traditional property management company along the way. And I got really disappointed with the industry, and I went out to find a tech company that we could partner with to help a lot of the manual processes in the property management space. And I never found one. So I founded Simplify a year ago, and we are the first tech-enabled multifamily property management company. And so we give owners peace of mind 2 ways. We make them more money on the cash flow side of things, and then we give them better data.
Sounds like a dream come true. I'm going to ask each developer a question, or each panelist a question, and then we're going to open it up for the group. Please enter your questions into Q&A. We'll have Q&A at the end of the fireside chat. So let's start with Angie. Angie, can you tell us a little more about the impact of technology on industrial developments and, explain the different approaches between build to suit projects and speculative, and give any examples you have of the work you've done?
Sure. It's kind of an interesting process to think about industrial buildings and technology. Big rectangles in the middle of a field, typically, you don't envision tons of technology being incorporated. Having said that, what we're experiencing with some of the tenants that I've shared with you previously, some of these large e-commerce giants, is that they are incorporating a lot of different levels of technology into their facilities. So the largest e-commerce company that a lot of us get those boxes with the smile on the side, they have a tendency on their buildings they have multi-level buildings that have requirements for robotics. So the upper floors of these buildings, 90 feet tall buildings, they will have multiple floors that have robotics running throughout. And these robotics pick product, they pack product, they actually inventory product. From a construction perspective, as a developer, what that means for us, there's these nuances that you wouldn't think about. The floors have to be super flat. You have to worry about how glossy the floor is. Typically with an industrial building, when you deliver it, you shine the floors up, they look beautiful. But a high gloss floor or a shiny floor causes challenges for the robotics that have to move throughout. There needs to be climate control for the robotics. And it's just there is this intricate network. Additionally, for instance, in some of the facilities that we've developed, there can be 3,000 Wi-Fi wireless access points throughout the building. Again, you wouldn't think about that with an industrial building typically. Another thing that is part of the kind of morphing, if you will, of industrial buildings is the need for electronic vehicle connections, so EV. We're finding that more tenants, for instance, like Amazon, FedEx will migrate in that direction, that they are moving into an electronic vehicle fleet. I'm going to give you for instance, out in California, they have a mandate throughout the state that by 2045, every truck purchased in California or in California will have to be an electronic vehicle. They have earlier thresholds and deadlines. By 2035, all short haul trucks that are drayage haulers coming from the port or from the rail will have to be electronic vehicles. And then last mile, those trucks and vans that are delivering throughout the state will all have to be last mile. The implication for an industrial developer is you need to lay a bunch of electric conduit throughout the facility. So we've recently delivered some last mile facilities, both in Indiana and throughout the country. And it's for one of these e-commerce companies. The building was already constructed, and this e-commerce company had made a public statement that they were morphing or migrating to electronic vehicles. We had to retrofit 20 miles of electrical conduit throughout the parking lot area to be able to accommodate every van and delivery truck eventually moving to an electronic vehicle format. So those are just a couple nuances as it relates to kind of the difference with industrial buildings. As it relates to build-to-suit versus speculative, with build-to-suit, the tenants, whether it's a FedEx or an Amazon or any of these other types of companies, they will tell us, and we, the developer, can work that into our project costs, that we need to have 20 miles of electrical conduit, that we need to have, remove the gloss from a floor, have multiple stories within the building. From a speculative development, we have to decide, are we going to absorb that cost and in turn be able to push that forward to the next tenant that might occupy that speculative building. The cost, just as a for instance, to add electrical vehicle accommodations can increase your project cost by maybe 10 or 15%. So as a speculative developer, you're trying to figure out, how do I make this work? And can I get the money to tick and tie out? When is that fulcrum? When is the pivot point where the tenant needs it and we, the developer, have delivered it? So those are just a couple examples.
That's very interesting. And along sector lines, Mike, let's talk a little bit about mobility. Can you talk about how PropTech is changing the way we move, work, and use space, particularly in urban areas?
Yeah, great question. I think it's a great segue from what Angie had been speaking about as well. I mean, I think we've always said, or some people have said, that it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. But I'm doubtful anyone's ever said it's all about the parking. When we talk urban development and we talk about how our cities flow and congestion of vehicles and cars, parking is one of these things I think often we think about as an afterthought. And it's really hard to make it a good experience. One of the things we've been working on, and in fact have deployed, is what we call our automated valet parking technology. And this essentially is exactly what it sounds like. It's a valet technology, but without the driver. So you can literally pull your vehicle up to a spot, get out, push a button on your app. The car goes and parks itself. And when you're ready to have the car come back, you push the button again. And of course, this unlocks a tremendous amount of value for the consumer. Think about people with mobility issues, folks that are trying to age in place. If this affords them the opportunity to remain and actually become more independent, these are all good things. When you look at it from the design of how we design our streets, our roads, our cities, our parking garages, our buildings, these sort of technologies can really affect investment. We've looked at it and we think that we can reduce parking, the space dedicated to parking by 15 to 20% because you don't have folks that need to open up the doors and get into their cars. Certainly as a mayor in my community, we just got done building a couple large parking garages, and I wish this technology was in place 5 years ago. It would have saved us a little money on some parking garages. But another use case just to think of when Andrew was talking about laying the conduit for EV vehicles, and certainly California is moving very progressively and aggressively in this realm. One of the use cases that we've shown is that you can actually have an EV vehicle come in, charge, move out, and leave that spot open for another vehicle to charge instead of being there for 8 hours. So the amount of capacity, electrical capacity you need to bring into the facility can actually be less by reusing certain infrastructure on a regular basis and more often, and getting the highest and best use out of it. So, some of these technologies that we think of maybe as an afterthought or as a convenience, if incorporated early on and thought about in city planning as well as building design, can really pay dividends down the road, and with the simple of some zeros and ones and a few stereo cameras.
Well, thank you for that. And, you both have brought up financing as a key factor in property tech installation. And, financing a parking deck is probably the most painful thing I've ever done in my career. That kind of brings us to Eve. Eve, there are a few real estate platforms that have emerged in the last few years. What makes small change unique? And what is the change index?
Okay, so I think what makes small change unique is two things. One is that we build our platform around a rule called regulation crowdfunding, which is the SEC's first attempt to really democratize investment. And that rule, it's pretty burdensome. We really almost act like a mini broker dealer. So we have a lot of rules to follow, but it permits anyone over the age of 18 to invest, which is a pretty amazing shift from where we were even 5 years ago. So anyone can invest. This means that if a developer in a community wants to let the neighbors in that community invest, they can. And that's often how our platform is being used. It's being used to raise money, but it's also being used to permit investment in the community around that particular project. And we, the second thing we do, just to make it really hard for ourselves, is we built a proprietary tool called the Small Change Index. We don't raise money for a project that doesn't at least score 60% on our index. And we are really looking at community, economic vitality, and mobility as key things that make cities better places for everyone. So we'll look at bike score, walk score. We'll look at whether the building faces the street, whether it has balconies, whether it spills out onto the street and activates the street. We look at all the things that people really love about cities and all the things that benefit everyone. So it's unlikely that we'll raise money for Dunkin' Donuts in the suburbs, but they have lots of other places to go. And you know, that's what the Change Index is all about.
Wonderful. And I know many of the projects that have been funded through Small Change have been multifamily properties. And that leads us to Paul. Paul, can you talk a little more about where you see multifamily property management heading, as well as how the multifamily technology landscape will grow and change over time?
Yeah, there's been a lot of technology that has been introduced over the last 10 years in the multifamily tech space, but it hasn't really made anyone's life better in the industry. So the renter pretty well has a bad experience renting today. Owners don't get very good data. They're not, investors aren't typically happy with their understanding of their investments. And then the employees in the industry do a lot of manual pushing of paper. And it's not what the job is supposed to be, which is engaging with people. And so until someone steps up and offers a simple vertically integrated solution that takes technology and bundles it with the people, the management side, and offers a simple solution, until that occurs, the industry won't change. And that's what I'm trying to do with my company. Simplify an analogy or a simple, for those of you who know Carvana, buying a used car is a really painful experience, and you can buy your car on your phone. It's really simple. There's a whole bunch of technology in the background working, but you as a buyer don't really see all that. That's what Simplify is. So we work with the owner, and we make it simple on the pricing and all the features, and we just bundle everything in one simple solution that is quite a bit less than they're paying today.
Wonderful. So now I'm going to ask some questions and open it up to the full panel. As we slowly work through the pandemic and vaccines become widely distributed, how do you see your business performing, changing it as we move through 2021 and beyond? Does anybody want to take that?
Well, I can certainly jump in from our perspective, and it's I'm sure everyone's seen on the news as it relates to delivery of the vaccines. A lot of these companies, like UPS, like FedEx, have a network. They have a network of existing facilities, but they're finding, not only because of the vaccine, but just because consumer patterns are changing, the product is getting around, is changing, that they need more facilities. So from our perspective, we Scanel, and then certainly any other industrial developer out there, there's going to be a continued, almost frenetic level of development for more facilities as quickly as possible. Likewise, these groups are also trying to figure out how do they retrofit into an existing facility, because they don't have time to wait for 9 to 12 months for a new build-to-suit to deliver.
Yeah, I can add to that. Actually, we've seen a real change since the summer of this year, and I think that might be because it's even harder now for developers to find financing. So we are incredibly busy, and it just seems to be on an upswing. Is that good or bad? I don't know. I think it's bad that financial institutions are pulling back even further, and I'm pretty sure that's not going to change next year or for a while. So we are benefiting from that.
Yeah, I would say a change when we launched our company a year ago, pre-COVID. We went out and we said we're gonna do no contact leases. We didn't call them that, but self-touring, virtual touring and signing of leases. And people, laughed at us and said, you can't do that. You'll always need an in-person leasing agent. And then COVID hit, and of course that changed everything. And everyone's trying to do that. So I don't think that's going to ever come back the way it was. The data is very clear that you're actually more likely to close someone when you don't have someone in person. They prefer it. The prospect prefers that convenience. They can go tour 24/7. They can, lease on their phone. They don't have to coordinate all that through a leasing agent. And so I think that there's always a need for that human touch at a community, but a lot of the processes are actually much better for the renter if they're done, through your phone.
I just leased my Jeep without seeing a single human body. So I respect that.
Maybe a little bit
I have one
from an automotive perspective. I can maybe just contribute a little bit here. I think, we work in a lot longer cycles, similar to, real estate investment. And certainly there's some short-term implications of what we've seen going on, both in the marketplace and in terms of people's behavior. In the long term, I think what it's done is it's kind of, some of this visioning that, eventually the entire planet's going to be urbanized and everyone's going to be taking public transportation in and out of work or working virtually. What we actually see is that, personal mobility is going to be around for a while. I think there's a lot of debate right now in our industry as far as, okay, what do the actual miles traveled look like now that people have become more comfortable with food delivery, ride sharing, as well as, just a huge breakout in package delivery. What do those miles actually look like now in terms of fleet and commercial versus personal consumption? So there'll definitely be some changes down the horizon. I think that affects every way that, we design our cities and plan our products in the auto industry.
That's great. And I encourage all of the participants to enter your questions into the Q&A. I have one more question for the panel, and then we're going to open it up. So a few of you have talked about, where you see things heading down the road, but, in the new COVID world, where do you see the most opportunity for disruption in property technology? What business needs are not being met right now? I think we lost Paul, but hopefully he can rejoin.
Can I jump in? I don't know how this is going to be solved, but, we're going to we were already seeing enormous changes in the retail industry or in retail property usage. And I think that accelerated. And I'm not sure what comes yet, but I think it's going to be seriously disrupted. I'm sort of still waiting to see what happens with co-working. I do think people forget really quickly, and that may not be great, but I think they do. So I think that type of workspace will come back again, but I'm not sure how long it will take. But I think the retail spaces, the first floor of buildings, I think are really what's going to change in our built environment.
Anyone else? Any major opportunities for disruption?
Well, I'm going to kind of tag on to what Eve said, and I do believe we're going to see kind of maybe a shift. I don't know if it's a full shift of the paradigm, but office space may be redeveloped, and there's something that we haven't necessarily conceived of it. We've seen, I think, sometimes, and not because of COVID, but just as a for instance, office space in certain areas that has been converted into storage, for instance. As the need for product has to get to the consumer quicker, and our ability to wait for stuff, our patience level has gone down exponentially. We have to continue to solve for that. And does retail space now become distribution space for that last mile, or even some shorter version of that? It'll be interesting to see, because there is impact not only on the physical space, but on the businesses themselves, on those retailers. It is going to be very disruptive. Opportunity, though, that comes out of that are those organizations or businesses that figure out how to leverage, off of it, and how to create some sort of business that helps support that migration, or that change, if you will.
I think I'll add to that as well. In my capacity as mayor, we targeted Class A office space a number of years ago to get, sort of our transition from being totally dependent on restaurants and retail to having sort of a third mix of opportunity here. And one of the things that we've seen, we've been able to, and I'll say recruit, I use that word very loosely, from neighboring cities that aren't, you're not going to come to Royal Oak because it's easy to pull in, go to your office, and then leave at 5 p.m. every day. Our city itself is an amenity. There are awesome restaurants and movie theaters and everything that you'd ever want to do, after work, before work, during work. And so what we're seeing is a lot more space dedicated to shared usage. When you look at the plans that come in, as well as a lot more creative companies that depend on teamwork and collaboration. And some of the models in the past, maybe where you had, and I don't want this to sound insulting, but a worker farm type mentality where you go to your cubicle, you type in, and then you go home. I think those we've proven through this pandemic that a lot of that transactional work can actually occur remotely or in lower cost locations. So I think what you'll see, maybe at least what I'm seeing on my end, the folks that are interested in our community, are more the creative, collaborative type businesses that require amenities and teamwork. And that's what we're really seeing driving our Class A office development here in the city versus your, I'll say worker farm type environment.
Yeah, there's a question asked to Constance about prop tech for municipal buildings. And, Royal Oak has been working on this massive municipal complex development, beautiful development. Can you talk a little bit about opportunities for disruption for prop tech in municipal campuses and buildings, access to residents for services? Where do you see that heading, Mike?
Yeah, so I appreciate you bringing that up, because we actually had a city hall and police station developed in an era where, because we got the plans for free for City Hall back in the 50s, they were high school plans. So when you walked into the building, just to be able to get a birth certificate or do whatever, you had to walk multiple floors, get in an elevator. It wasn't very convenient to conducting any sort of business with the community. And I think today more than ever, with the growing mistrust in governments, elected officials, and companies we see going around, transparency is absolutely key, and access to government is absolutely key. And so we designed our new building to make sure that it was completely accessible, all the departments right there, all the information at anyone's fingertips to be there physically, but also, realizing that a lot of things like dog licenses or things that can be done, online or remotely, that we've incorporated that into our workflow, which means that our building had to be designed to accommodate it as well. Policing. We had a building where you'd walk right in and it was very closed off, plexiglass, not very inviting, and more based on law and order and crime versus, what our police department, we really wanted to represent, which is pursuing justice. So now we have a department that is the new station is energy efficient. It's got, enough space for the 911 operators and the new technology that we need to address and realize and respond to calls with, but it's also very open and inviting, so people can start to build those bonds better with their government and with their police departments. So technology was a big part of our transformation. but also, the facility design was also incredibly important to us as well, to make sure that people felt that, their community was transparent, open, and welcoming.
Thanks for that, Paul. With that, we're a few minutes early. Well, I definitely want to encourage you to ask your questions. We had one question, but I think I already asked that for Lydia. We're on the same page. Eve, let's talk a little bit about the future of your platform. You and I have talked about specific projects and applying your platform. Where are you seeing gaps right now? Projects that your platform, can't address the needs for, or where is your platform going to move to in the future to more broadly invest in projects?
Well, I think our platform can address any type of project, and we've been approached by very large developers. That's not really the issue. I think really the issue is the acceptance of this technology by investors and educating them, because now we have a sea of investors who've never had the opportunity to invest. They have to be really educated on how to invest and what a real estate investment looks like. And that's a pretty tall order and a pretty slow grind. So for our platform, it's really that's really what's slowing us down: investor education and investor acceptance. And if you think about that, accredited investors tend to be older, okay, and probably less accepting of new technology. That makes it even harder, because the rule we use, regulation crowdfunding, although it permits everyone to invest, if you're not accredited, you're very limited as to what you can invest. So we need those smaller investors along with accredited investors to really be able to raise, $600,000, $900,000 for a project, a couple of million, 10 million. And it's really acceptance by people to all invest together that I think is those things are a really big hurdle. I hear time and time again from developers who have some large investors in the wing that they do not want to be next to these small investors. And that really, really puzzles me, because does it mean you're a bad person if you're a small investor? I don't really understand where that's coming from. And even more strange is that the rule we use requires us to really know our investors, and it's a very rigorous investing process, actually much more rigorous than a friends and family round. So this is, I think, this is really what's got to happen before that's an accepted route for raising significant amounts of money. But the other thing is, we're starting to hear from large developers doing really large projects, like a developer who has assembled 5 blocks in Queens. And they're reaching out to us because the city wants them to provide an opportunity for those neighborhoods, for the people in the neighborhoods to invest. And that's really what we want to do. That's what we want to provide. So I'm hoping that will grow.
That's wonderful. We have a question from Robin from POH, and this goes to everybody. Can you address communities at risk, and what creativity you see emerging that can address affordability and access to development? Is there any hope for land and property banks in these areas to build equity and reinvestment? Robin, I don't know you, but I'd love to meet you.
Would you like
anyone?
Would you like me to tackle that?
Please.
So, I mean, I would urge you to go look at my platform, smallchange.co. We have an abundance of developers sort of testing out affordable solutions. Everything from an ADU developer who's really providing an ADU in exchange for a ground lease, because he understands that actually coming up with a finance to build one is very difficult for most people, to a developer, a minority developer who's building affordable housing and a savings account for every single renter. So I think, what we're seeing on Small Change is incredibly exciting. People are picking away at creative solutions for the very real and serious problems that we we have right now. It's small, but it's a start. So I think there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of hope here. Property taxes. I'm just seeing here, is there any help for land and property banks? Yeah, we see those as well. I don't really know that much about it, but I think there are other ways to build equity and reinvestment that's mindful of the people who live in that community.
And
Anybody else want to chime in? Yep.
Yeah, just at a higher level, I think, local governments have to be intentional, and you just can't hope it. You just can't say it. You have to take measured steps, whether it be in your planning ordinances, or if you are dealing with, excess property. We had an opportunity to sell a golf course, and raise a lot of money for the community, but we opted to convert almost all of it into community space. And I know it's not the same as affordable housing or whatever at this point, but it shows that, a community has to be committed, and you can't just measure yourself as a community or as a business strictly on, return on investment, so to speak, or what's the taxable values, or things of that nature. I think there has to be a conscious decision to say, we as a community value these things. And one of them is making sure that we're inclusive, that you don't have to be making a six-figure salary to call your Royal Oak home, for example. That, we have parents and kids, and I want my kids to be able to move here and stay in the community one day when they're all grown up, and they might not be making six figures. So how do we ensure that, we truly value something, and then, prescribe it in every opportunity that we have? It's not easy, but there are things that you can do to make it work, and you just have to be committed to it. As your city leadership or community leadership has to be committed to it first and foremost.
Eve talked a little bit about the acceptance of tech, and Angie, I feel your pain trying to finance projects, put capital stacks together. How has your experience been with traditional lenders trying to push for those line item costs for prop tech?
It's been an interesting process. There has to be a little bit of a leap of faith, which is kind of a funny thing to suggest when you're talking about dollars and cents. We've additionally had the challenge when you look at some of these last mile facilities, for instance, which are a sea of asphalt and parking, not the most sexy thing for sure, and adds a lot of expense to the project. Getting lenders to be comfortable knowing that project costs can be upwards of $300 or $400 a square foot, where a typical industrial building's price per square foot, project cost might be $70 or $80. That's a significant jump. Lenders are getting there and getting more comfortable with, the strength of the tenant in a lot of cases, and then the strength of the sponsor, obviously. But it's not a layup by any means, and there's a finesse to it, and making sure that the lender understands how the facility fits into the network and reaches to the tenants, et cetera.
And this might be a little insider baseball, but Angie mentioned that they are experiencing a frenetic level of industrial development. How long do you anticipate this to last, and what are the hottest markets? That's for you, Angie.
Oh boy. As far as how long it'll last, I think we've got a long runway, in all honesty. Is that 18 months, 24 months? I think what we're finding is that the consumer patterns are going to shift as a result of us being forced to work from home and spend a lot more time at home than we did going out to malls, et cetera. So that supports kind of a long runway related to e-commerce. Hottest markets, I kind of laughed at that part of the question in particular, because we are building facilities in Parkersburg, West Virginia, which is 2.5 hours away from Columbus, Ohio, and is not exactly what everyone would think as a hot spot. We're developing another distribution facility, again, for one of these e-commerce companies in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, or no, excuse me, Lafayette, Louisiana. So 2 hours away from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So it really depends upon the company, whether it's a FedEx or a Home Depot or whoever, and their network analysis and the rooftops and the zip codes that they have to reach out to. Because some of the places that we're building these facilities, I never in a million years would think that I'm dropping a $400 a square foot last mile facility in that marketplace.
Interesting. And how do you build prop tech when you can't get wireless? I think that no, we have answered all the questions in the Q&A. I just want to ask our panelists if you have, any kind of thoughts as we wrap this up on the future of your work or anything else you'd like to talk about. Let's start with you, Mike.
Yeah, I think it's been a very interesting discussion. And we see sort of the confluence of, technology, connectivity, investment, and all of these things come together. And I'd say that, one of the things that I'm learning and that I continue to learn that's been very interesting to me in my career is some of the things that drive, what our environment looks like in terms of urban planning in the city. Sometimes it's the small things that you may overlook that can really drive big change and big dividends. I think in almost every disruptive technology that's taken place in mobility and beyond has always been something that, was sort of thought of as a convenience or an afterthought, and then it just scales very, very quickly. And I think we're going to see some of those moving forward. And I think to the extent that we can think about them and be agile in our planning when we're developing property, operations, or even a community, I think is going to be paramount here as we accelerate over the next 10 years. I think COVID has exposed a lot of things that, easily we want to say are broken in our society, but I think it's also exposed a lot of things that show very much promise. And so the times ahead are going to be exciting as soon as we get out of this mess.
Wonderful. How about you, Eve?
Well, I love technology. And I think most of us don't realize how much it has filtered into our lives, but I really think we should just fully embrace it. I mean, I, for one, am extremely grateful that I haven't had to go to a bank in years. So, I mean, technology saves time. It can do all sorts of things for us. And I'm hoping that over the next few years, we're going to see people really embrace it fully and really become unbelievably creative with it.
How about you, Angie? Any closing thoughts?
I echo both the excitement and the sentiment of both Mike and Eve. I am excited about, and we've seen this when markets have had downturns too, that other industries flourish as a result. And, seeing things which I never would have thought about personally, but at some of these facilities, that a camera system that runs throughout the facility required by some of these companies, that there's these different vendors and manufacturers that are going to have a surge in business because these companies, like these e-commerce companies, need to have cameras so that they can watch their employees. I mean, literally, we have a client, a tenant, that watches their facility, and it's purely for social distancing. It's the whole reason. It's not for theft. It's not for anything else. It's purely for social distancing. And I think we're going to see more of those unexpected opportunities coming out of this situation, coming out of this COVID environment. And I think it's exciting.
Well, I absolutely love that we're ending this fireside chat on a positive note. There's one more question in the chat about zoning and entitlement processes, but hopefully we can connect Dave with Mike or others, and Eve may have already answered that question. Yeah, Eve, go ahead, type the answer. So let's answer this really quickly. Michael mentioned the use of technology for city services. It seems one area prime for disruption is the entitlement process. It's taking longer to gain approval for zoning and permitting. and to move forward. Any thoughts on either incentivizing city workers to speed the process or inserting technology in the process?
So, can I answer this quickly?
Answer, yeah.
Okay, so I think, I've never been really interested in cryptocurrency, but I think blockchain, which cryptocurrencies are built on, really holds a lot of potential for entitlement processes, legal closings, contracts, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that we're just not there yet with it, but I would look at blockchain to solve that problem.
And I'll just, it's a very interesting question, because certainly there's ways that we're using technology in our building department to make the process quicker and faster. But in some cases, understand that the democratic process in a city is intentionally supposed to run slow or at a certain pace, because if you went and could click a button and get instant zoning approval for a new big building, I think there'd be a lot of people in the community that may feel alienated or that they didn't have say or input. I think one of the criticisms that we always get, if somebody doesn't like a project, which inevitably that's always going to be the case, is, well, you should take longer to debate this. You should take longer to talk about it. And certainly, we can't take forever. But keep in mind, even though technology gets deployed, you still can't replace the human element, the human emotion with a click of a mouse. So that's one thing to make sure that we consider, is that in order to be successful, it means you have to bring more people behind what you're trying to do. If you're trying to put up a fence in your backyard or build a big building, and there's delays built in the process for a reason, and that's more on the civic emotional end.
Thank you for that. And thank you to Mike, Eve, Angie, and Paul. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Jamie.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jill. Again, thank you for joining us today. And thank you to our speakers, panelists, sponsors for making this program possible. Keep an eye out in your inbox the next couple of days for the recording of today's program, and the other previous 2 days programs were recorded as well. So just keep an eye out for those. And with that, I would just like to wish everybody a happy holiday, and we'll see you in 2021. Thank you.
Thank you.